there's no one book I would recommend. It's more of just that a mantra for yourself, right? So it's the idea of ready, fire, aim.
Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. Every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. Hello, ambitious dentists. Today I have with us a very prestigious guest that I'm really excited to be able to bring to you guys. One that I'm hoping that we can actually get on maybe a few more podcasts, just because what's in his brain is things that I want you guys to take in, to listen to, and to hear. So today I have with us Dr. Chris Salierno, who is the editor-in-chief of Dental Economics. Yes, the Dental Economics. It's a fantastic publication that has a lot of really interesting ideas, concepts, articles, things that you guys can go in and a lot of it read for, absolutely free to be able to educate yourselves on some of the things that you probably weren't taught in dental school. So Dr. Chris is a practicing dentist in New York. He is also, again, the editor-in-chief of Dental Economics, and I'm very happy to have him on the podcast with us today to talk about all the things that we enjoy geeking out about here in Start Your Dental Practice. So Dr. Chris, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Excited to geek out with you.
Awesome. So Dr. Chris, tell me how a dentist goes from being in dentistry to being an editor of a dental economics magazine.
Utter boredom. That's how. I was a practicing dentist. I graduated in 2005, did a GPR, 2006. And I love dentistry, but I was practicing doing the associate thing for a few years. And about 2010, I started my own practice with my business partner, a total startup. And so that was very exciting to me. I was enjoying learning the clinical, as you do for a few years. I was excited to learn the business, which I knew nothing about. But after a couple of years, I realized I don't know if I have it in me to practice 5 or 6 days a week for my entire career. I knew at that point I loved lecturing, I loved writing, I loved working with companies. I had some early opportunities to give feedback and do consulting with companies, not with dentists. I loved all of that. I loved travel. So I started to put it out there into the universe. I would go to conferences, do any lecturing gig I could, that I wanted to just not practice full time. I wanted to practice 2 or 3 days a week. So I've been working with DE for a few years. And when my predecessor, Joe Blaze, was stepping down, retiring from the magazine, I was lucky that they thought of me. So it's been a great balance. So I'll practice 2 or 3 days a week, and then the rest is at home or on the road, lecturing, answering an endless supply of emails and phone calls, and I enjoy that balance. It's great.
Awesome. So, for the people that aren't familiar with dental economics, what does dental economics do for the community at large?
Sure. So, dental economics has been around since 1911. It was known by the name oral hygiene at the time, and it's always had a focus on the business of dentistry, on practice management. Yeah, there's some stuff about products, there's some stuff about clinical, but that's really not the focus. Though that material is always walking us back towards, well, should you purchase this technology for your practice? Can you treat patients more efficiently? It's not just a showcase of brilliant clinical skills. So when I took over in 2014, we organized the magazine into 4 distinct pieces of content, 4 sections. The first is called Macroeconomics. So we look at the big sweeping changes that are affecting our profession. As we know, in the past 10, 20 years, there's quite a lot that's happened to our profession, and it affects every single one of us. The second section is practice. That's our bread and butter. That's a lot of practice management advice. The third section is science and tech, where, as I was mentioning before, we get into a little bit of clinical, a little bit of products, but it's more related to the business opportunities that it brings. And then the fourth section is money. We have talked about investments, retirements, and those other kinds of financial bits of advice. So that, in a nutshell, encapsulates the kind of content that we put out. But of course, it's It's beyond just print today. It's e-newsletters, it's private Facebook groups, it's live events, and, the whole gamut there.
So, as far as the different areas that you just discussed, which one is the one that you feel like you've resonated the most with, or you have maybe even had the most interest in, being very shortly out of dental school?
When I first got out of dental school, I was really focused on the clinical. So my answer would have been science and tech when I first got out, because you went to a residency perhaps, but you're just busy like trying to not kill people, right? When you're working as a dentist, that was my fear, is that, am I going to do this wrong? Am I going to get sued? I don't have the protection of the school anymore. So rightly so, I was very focused on improving my clinical skills, learning more about materials, the stuff they didn't teach you in dental school clinically, right? But about 3 years of working for other people, when I wanted to just open my own practice, that's when it started to dawn on me, oh, I should pay attention to systems for recall, or making sure that my business is profitable. And that's been a long journey. And so now my answer would be the practice section. I'm really interested in still to this day, 8 years into my own practice, learning how to do things better and learning how to lead the team and get that buy-in to deliver a consistent experience to patients and make sure the business is profitable. There's an endless, I'm not saying I know everything I need to know about clinical. That's always evolving too, but I feel pretty good where I am clinically. The real challenge for me now is to learn how to run my business.
So, whenever you're trying to unpeel that onion of how to run your business better, and you're someone who you'd be surprised how many dentists I talk to, and they're like, oh yeah, I actually have a CPA license, or oh yeah, I've got an MBA or something like that. But the vast majority, don't have some type of undergraduate, or even maybe they haven't even taken really any business courses. What do you usually say to people that are from that background, because I do find that a lot of the younger dentists do gravitate towards the clinical areas, which is natural. But whenever they do make that leap from clinical to saying, okay, I got to figure out some of the business stuff if I ever want to make any money in this industry, how do you have them go from point A to B in there? Like, because that's a hard thing to get through.
Well, first of all, you definitely don't need an MBA to run a business or to run
True.
a dental practice. That's for darn sure. There are so many successful businesses in your own local community. You don't have to think that hard to find really successful businesses, and I guarantee you the majority of them don't have MBAs. They probably weren't even business majors in many cases, right? Not to take away from that education. Believe me, I don't have an MBA, but I'm reading MBA-like books on management and all those things now, and I'm really enjoying the lessons that they impart. But someone that's just beginning that journey towards ownership, maybe they were like me a few years ago, they were associating and they're like, I'm going to start my own business, but I don't know where to start. My advice is to surround yourself with the people that know more than you. To surround yourself with the CPAs, with practice brokers, with people that will, people from Bank of America or Practice Solutions or Wells Fargo or these other dental specific lenders. You can surround yourself with experts who are mutually invested in you having a successful practice. Of course, the age-old answer too is to find a mentor that you can help with too. And so dental societies are a great resource for that. Even if you don't feel comfortable asking the guy that practices in your neighborhood for business advice, you can meet people from around the country that will give you that advice. And then, of course, there's just a wealth of information online, from YouTube to, of course, I'll mention dental economics in that breath. But there's a wealth of information. The majority of it is free, where you can start to just surround yourself in that business mindset. And my ultimate piece of advice when I lecture to dental students and to new dentists, when it comes to getting yourself ready for that business mindset and where do you start, there's no one book I would recommend. It's more of just that a mantra for yourself, right? So it's the idea of ready, fire, aim, which is a famous business book. Ready, when you're in business, have an idea. I'm going to start this recall system. We're going to do it this way. Or we're going to spend some money on a marketing campaign or whatever. Have an idea, think it out, but then just do it, right? Don't sit there forever analyzing the most perfect way to do it, because I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, you never end up doing it, and you end up just keep doing it the way you did it yesterday. but do the darn thing. And then after that is aim. Then you aim. Then say, okay, let's pay attention to the metrics. Did this work? Did it not? Should we throw out the whole idea? Should we refine it? Just not being afraid to fire and fail is the key. And if you can trust in that, which is hard to do, as I said, when you're worried about like not, sending an endo file through the side of someone's tooth, like we're trained to want to be really careful in what we do. The business mindset is very different from the clinical mindset. You can fail. In fact, you will fail many times, small and big, in business. And the goal is to just continue to learn from that and recover.
It's great advice. I've shared a lot in the past on the podcast that whenever we started the podcast, like one of the things that I had to just kind of barrel through was something like the intro music. Like I didn't like, all the little things can bog you down so fast in any business. And people that are very specific on down to the smallest degree of measurement, being able to run through things isn't always first nature to them. So that's really great advice. So as far as the, having the person that is, getting into business, going to get started, and maybe they're already a practice owner and they're starting to get a bit more serious about learning how to run that better business. What are some of the areas that you find that people come to you and maybe have some misconceptions about? Because I know I get tons of them, and so I'm sure you do too. What are some of the biggest areas you see some of the people in that mindset of, okay, now's the time for me to start on this, to have them start, that they get just the concept is kind of muddled, maybe not wrong, but just a bit incorrect.
So if someone, let's say, has already started a practice or bought a practice, now what is kind of your question?
Right,
So
exactly.
yeah, I think there's so many areas of a practice you have to pay attention to all at the same time. So many different systems, so many different key performance indicators. I think that the critical one to look at is your profitability. That is one that will make or break you. So the famous statistic is that less than 1% of dental practices in the U.S. default on their practice loan. So that's pretty darn good, right? So roughly less than 1% of dental practices that are especially new and recently transitioned practices fail. That should give you a lot of confidence. However, the other side of that is just because a practice isn't failing doesn't mean it's successful, right? So you can have a practice that's barely making payroll, where the dentist isn't taking home money, where the dentist doesn't have money left over to be charitable or invest in new technology or fix the broken chair that they still have from when they bought the practice. Profitability is critically important, and I think a very necessary first step in evaluating the health of the business. Now, there's a lot of other systems that feed into that, right? Are you charging enough for your fees? Is the cost of your materials too high? There's a lot of stuff that goes into whether or not you're profitable. But I think that's a really important place to start. You sit down with an accountant, or if you're really good at QuickBooks, and you look at your P&L, you look at your profit and loss statement, also known as the income statement. And I recommend looking at this minimum twice a year, but even quarterly can be, especially for a younger practice, can be a really important habit to get into. You can start to look at the different parts of your practice and see where you're maybe spending too much or not enough. And then you just start to make some more informed decisions about what to do next for your
practice. You hear different numbers all over the place. I know people ask me this all the time, but what in your mind is a goal for profitability? And I think it's probably also important if we kind of define what profitability is so that we both are talking about the same thing, because profitability is a bit of while it is a definite answer, when people, I find that especially in the dental industry, when somebody says the profit, a lot of people have different definitions of that. So probably for the listener, it'll be better if we kind of define that a bit.
Sure. And look, there's generally agreed accounting definitions, and then there's what a small business like a dentist would use, kind of an armchair definition. So, I take all of that with what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But broadly, your overhead is all of the costs to run your business, and your profit is the amount that is either chosen to be left over in the practice to maintain a cushion or invest or whatever, or what you then take home as your pay. This is especially true for solo practitioners, who still make up a good bulk of the dental workforce. It's up to you entirely. You don't have a partner. You don't have other people that are invested in this practice, that are part owners. So they don't have equity. So yeah, it's up to you to say, yeah, let me leave an extra $5,000 in the bank because I'm saving up for something else, versus let me take just this much amount home. You're not salaried, so it's entirely your choice. So that kitty, that pool of money you're making those decisions with, would be the profit at the end of the day. You paid your bills at the end of the month. Here's what's left over to pay, to take home for yourself. That's a very simple definition, right? Now, there are different targets and different goals for what that should be. There's research that shows the average overhead for a practice in the US can be as high as 70 or 75%. So for every dollar the practice makes, the dentist is only taking home, or leaving in the kitty, 25 cents on the dollar, and 75 cents just goes to paying the bills. Many consultants that I speak with, or the information I read, would say that a good target for general dentists could be closer to maybe 60% overhead, taking home 40%. And of course, then there's variability based on specialty. If you're a pediatric dentist or an endodontist, lower overhead, you're doing just a few procedures, easier to keep track of some of those things, and they're still very profitable. You can charge nice fees. So that may be closer to 50% as a target, which is pretty nice. If you make 50 cents on every dollar you make, that's not so bad. You're going to have a pretty lean and mean operation. But those are some of the big overall categories and definitions for it.
In the discussion we're having today, just to recap, profitability is all revenue minus all expenses, which expenses we're calling overhead. And any money that's left over either goes to you as pay or goes into the company's bank accounts to be left over to maybe reinvest later in some format. Is that?
That's correct. So if you look at a profit and loss statement, which if you're listening at home or watching this, I recommend when you can to Google profit and loss statement, and you'll see examples of this. But essentially, a very simple calculation that the profit and loss statement does is it takes your gross revenue, every dollar that the practice collected, and then you'll see beneath that a whole list of the expenses. That's from a very simplistic standpoint. You can call all of that your overhead. That's not technically the definition, but for our purposes, sure, why not? And then what's left at the bottom when you subtract gross revenue minus your expenses is your net income, your net revenue. That is either what you paid yourself with or what you left in the practice afterwards. Now, I have to be just a little asterisk here. Some dentists and their accountants will actually the dentist will pay themselves a salary, and they'll list that under the expenses. And so that you can see how there's different games and different strategies for where you hide the money, so to speak. Not hide, but where you put the money.
That's our job, right? That's the CPA.
Yeah. Then there's other games where they actually hide money, but that's the point. The concepts are what's really important. How you and your CPA choose to lay out your income statement is less critical, as long as you understand what those numbers are. Don't be like I was the first few years, when your accountant hands this to you a couple times a year and you just go, okay, and then you put it in a folder somewhere, and all you look at is whether or not the gross revenue went up and the net revenue went up, and that's as far as your analysis goes. That's a waste of that precious document.
Absolutely. So let's have a hypothetical of saying that someone is not quite to whatever goal it is. I've heard that the 70% number as well, as far as for GPs, and of how they've gone to how they get to 70% overhead. I've never actually seen the data collected on there, other than, and when I have seen it, a lot of the time it's been like surveys, which is usually dependent on the person filling out the survey to create the data, which then you're not sure if it's even accurate or not, because of what we just proved that there's different ways to think about what profit actually is. So some people may be answering it one way and some people may be answering it the other way, even if it's very well written out in the survey. Maybe not everybody read the survey, or maybe somebody didn't do the answers right. So from our data set, and we've got somewhere around 150 dental practices that we help out with, we find it's usually closer to the 50 to 60% range for overhead. And by defining,
and that's a good target. That's fantastic.
But we do have a lot of them that are at the 70%. I mean, we don't have, we have, there's quite a few that are there. And, it's whenever I started this company, I thought, in the name of the company, Dentist Metrics, was, oh, I'll go in and I'll math this out. I will figure out the math equation. I'll figure out the algorithm to be able to tell everybody how everything should be done as far as numbers goes. And I quickly realized, oh, that was a dumb idea. And so we got in here and I said, okay, everybody's got a different issue. Everybody's got different problems. Everybody's got a different reason why their numbers don't look one way or the other. And, they've all got to kind of start somewhere,
Right.
Whether it be, revenue or expenses that they're looking at. So whenever you have talked to consultants or maybe have talked to other dentists that have, faced this challenge of I'm focusing on my business now and I want to be more profitable. I want to be a better business so that I can take more home, be more secure in my future and be able to do things that I want to do in my life. What have you found to be some of the better ways to focus that energy?
Well, I first should say I think you're right. These numbers, these are national averages. Sometimes they're self-reported. It's important to take them with a grain of salt. I agree with that. I think the real important thing is that you're having active conversations with your CPA, who is one of the most critical members of your team. Hopefully you don't have your lawyer on speed dial, but you should have your CPA on speed dial, right? As long as you're able to have a trend of what you're doing, and your CPA may also be able to offer a trend of what they're seeing for similar practices in the area. As long as you're able to get a sense of that the actual numbers aren't as critical. You shouldn't say, oh my gosh, I'm at 63% overhead. I really need to get to 62. That's what the national average is that I'm told. It's more, every practice is its own special little snowflake. So that's something to keep in mind. What I would say where a dentist should focus their energy, once they have this basic concept of profitability and all of that in mind, is to think how they need to stand out from the rest of the practices out there. We are not each other's competition. I'm always very clear on that. We are colleagues. We're not competition. That being said, the floodgates on dental marketing have been kicked wide open, and there are many practices that are very boldly marketing themselves and their fees and all of that. So I think it's critical for a dentist, whether they've just started a practice are about to, or even if they're 10 years in and just they've been flat for a few years, for them to sit down and think about what their business model is. And that sounds like a really boring thing to do, because we've never been taught it. You just imagine like, oh yeah, when I applied for my loan, I had to like stare at a blank Microsoft Word document and type in like my vision statement to help people with their teeth.
You're talking about like
it just sounds horribly boring.
You're talking about a really fun Saturday night for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
exactly. What you're talking about.
But there are a number of different management and consulting mechanisms, frameworks to help you work through that. I'm a big fan of the business model canvas, which was put out by a gentleman by the name of Osterwalder in a book called Business Model Generation that came out in 2010. That's a very visual way to think about your business model, and there's others out there too. But and we don't have to go through the whole exercise here, but there are fun, intriguing visual ways for you to start thinking about whom you serve, what their unique selling proposition is to them, and what channels you need to reach them, and how you're going to generate revenue. There's all of those building blocks for a successful business that you can find, and you can do it strategically with your business partners, with your team, even, and help you stand out. That's very important. We shouldn't just hang up a shingle and say, yes, I'm a dentist. I'm here to treat everyone. Yeah, I'll treat whoever walks in my door most of the time, but I'm not creating infrastructure and marketing for everyone. I'm not trying to be every dentist to every potential patient. And that's one of the areas where I think a lot of dental marketing might miss the boat. We can strategically speak to smaller niches and really grow that within our practices.
I definitely see that on the marketing side of things, because since I have the name Dentist Metrics in my URL, I get every single marketing email from all the spammers that everybody else gets to. Like, hey, Dr. Van Horn. I'm like, no.
Are you looking for more new patients?
Yes. Oh man.
Can you handle more implant patients?
Yeah.
Like, how many times do I get that on LinkedIn?
Yeah. well, we create raving patients, and sometimes they'll say the word clients. I'm like, oh, come on, guys, just do a little bit of research.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I hear that, and I definitely see what you're saying. Is that they'll go out and they'll have a a kit of stuff that they just send to every dentist that signs up with their thing, and so pretty quickly it just becomes this like echo chamber of everybody doing the same thing, which
Right.
makes nobody stand out.
So now no one said you've defeated the purpose of your marketing, in my opinion. And this is not to bash marketers. There are some really
Yeah.
great dental marketers out there that can genuinely help you practice. But if they're just giving you a turnkey solution that looks like what they're doing for everybody else, there maybe not that maybe that's not the best use of your money. And what will help you go into those conversations with marketers, if you choose to use them, is to have an idea of what your business model is. Who is it that you're trying to reach? What is it that you're trying to present to them? And if you don't know, then they're just going to give you a more generic form of marketing because you haven't informed them differently.
And so as far as setting yourself apart, what are some of the ways that you've seen successful practices set themselves apart in just term, because there's it's not going to be you'll say, well, one of them had a really great customer service, and then all of a sudden everybody listens like, oh, well, we're going to have great customer service, and so that person's going to be out of business. So it's obviously things you can share as far as like what have you seen to be able to have people be able to set themselves apart.
I'll tell you how I differentiate myself. I use that business model canvas as my guide. So the first step is to think about the specific target demographics that you want to attract. And I'll go through the exercise, the first couple parts of the exercise with you. One of the business demographics I selected was busy business people. That's what I called it. That's demographic ease. The other demographic ease would be soccer moms or seniors or whatever. So I realized, that's my favorite type of person to attract. I like to offer a high level of service, not one of those kind of volume, discount places. I want to spend more time with the patients, but also get them out efficiently and promptly. So because I had that as a vision for the type of person I wanted to treat, we opened our business, our startup, in an area where there are many corporate groups. There's Estee Lauder, Canon, Nikon. There's all these major. Actually, Shine is there too. There's these major hubs right there. And so I figured, well, I'll have convenient business hours. I'll participate with whatever plans that they participate with. And hopefully they see me for their exams, cleanings, and dentistry when they're on their lunch break or after work so they can skip traffic and then drive home on an open road. We also then created an environment in our office that caters to that, higher end spa kind of vibe, right? There's the stones and the waterfalls and all of that. What you don't see anywhere when you go in are, children's toys and Highlights magazine and all that stuff. I'll treat kids, but that's not who I'm trying to welcome and bring into the practice. So when you go through that exercise, it starts to all fall into place. You're giving consistent message to your patients. The other patients that I've identified as target demographics, by the way, are sleep apnea and seniors who have loose or ill-fitting dentures and are maybe looking to transition out of them with implants. So what I should say is, you've noticed up to this point, I really haven't talked about dental services, dental products, right? I'm talking about people and what services they want, the conveniences they're looking for. If I went through this exercise and said, yeah, I want to do more implants, well, that's not really helping me figure out how I can actually accomplish that. I got to think about the patient first and where they exist and what they're looking for. That's how I've distinguished my practice is thinking about catering my whole office hours, every element, the design, everything is catered towards those three specific groups. And for those reasons, the practice has grown. I'm not trying to be everything to everybody.
And that's great. What we've found is that the practices that do focus on something like that is that, it's kind of, it's a much more of a snowball effect than it is a overnight sensation a lot of the times, of that you start attracting these people that are in this certain demographic, and all of a sudden, guess what? All the people that they know are in that demographic too.
Yeah.
And then they start bringing
absolutely.
people in, and it just starts snowballing like that.
Absolutely. It's old fashioned, but it works. I don't spend a lot of money on marketing. I'm going to start doing a little bit more, but you can organically grow your practice successfully if you've got a great concept that you can execute on regularly. If you try to target a specific demographic and offer them a range of services and experiences that are consistent with what they're looking for, then you will grow. You will grow without question.
Okay, so we've discussed profitability, the understanding of profitability. We've discussed the idea of differentiation. What are some of the other concepts that new practice owners that are getting into business ownership in general that they should be aware of, just as far as conceptualized? We don't have to be super specific or anything like that.
I think the another critical element is your leadership abilities, which is another very generic, boring sounding term, because there's a million books on leadership that many of them teach you nothing. But I will tell you from a business standpoint, it's the largest part of your overhead is your team members and how you compensate them. That is the number one line item. But from a stress standpoint, or from a consistent patient experience standpoint, if you have significant turnover, it's just the worst. Now, I've had to go through that, fortunately, not because I'm a tyrannical boss, at least I hope not, but more just because we've been hiring younger women when they come out of assisting school or hygiene school, and then everyone gets pregnant and then they move. And we joke, we've had like 6 pregnancies in our office in the past few years. And we're excited for them, we're happy for them, but then in some cases we then have to bid them a fond farewell and then go through that process of hiring people, trying to find the right mix. It stinks. Like, you have turnover, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't yet, then may it never fall on you. But finding the right systems for hiring, for hire slowly, fire quickly, as they say, is a great philosophy. Better interview skills, so you can sort through the generic interview questions and actually try to connect with people and see if they're a good fit for your practice. And then to implement a growth strategy for them, where you're training them, you're encouraging them, you're rewarding them for their hard work. My father's an orthodontist. He's nearing retirement, and he has a team in one of his offices that's been with him for, you measure it in decades, not even years. And that's made his experience going into that practice for decades all the much more rewarding. It's just, when you work with a great team, you get to go in and focus on dentistry and a little bit of practice management and go on autopilot. And that's a beautiful thing when you can do that. So after just understanding the basics of whether or not your business will fail through profitability or being able to pay the bills, I would say investing in your ability to lead a great team and get them excited and help them grow and stay with you.
So one of the things that I find a lot of dentists have problems with is in the leadership element. You have to be leading them towards something. Like you said, give them a path, give them a guide, give them some type of an expectation for them to be able to achieve, as well as for you to be able to give to them in some way. And if you think about the old mantra of, begin with the ending in mind, I find that a lot of dentists have problems really defining what their end is going to be. What are they going to do with this thing, the dental business? We have lots that say, I want to be a single practice owner. I want to have a really big practice. I want to have a bunch of partners. I want to have, 80 offices. I want to have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. If you were talking to somebody that didn't really know where they were going with that, they didn't really have that ending in mind. What's a way for you to be able to talk to that person and be able to say, this is kind of how you figure this out? Do you have any words of wisdom to that? Not really economics, speak here, but just see if you have any guidance for people.
Yeah, that's a very deep and profound question. What is it that you're doing here? You've gone from high school to college, to dental school, and then maybe a residency. So now you're in your 20s or 30s, and for the first time, maybe you've gotten a chance to pause and say, what do I want to do with my life, right? Everything up to then has been getting that degree, and now you have to ask yourself, well, now what? You want to have a successful practice, you want to make money, you want to start a family. Those other personal things start to come into play, and that's great. And that's the right time for it and all that. But I love your question, because this is something I ask myself continually. I am in varying states of a metaphysical crisis.
I think everyone in their 30s is
time,
40s.
I'm recovering from one or about to get into one. What your purpose in your life, may very well look like I practice a few days a week. I practice 3 days a week doing high-end fee-for-service dentistry, and then I get to travel the world the rest. Now, maybe that's what happiness looks like for you. Maybe it's I love every single filling I do, and I just want to churn this out and have a blast and work as much as I possibly can until I drop dead. And that's your happiness. That's fantastic. But keep in mind, I think if you're in dental school or if you've just graduated, the DDS, DMD is just a means to an end. It's not the end. And I know when you go through that many years of school like we have, it seems like it might be what the end is. Well, now that I'm a dentist, I'm just going to go be a dentist. No, you should be a dentist with purpose heading towards somewhere, whatever that is. And at this point, I would put it towards happiness for yourself, fulfillment for you and your family, if you start a family, and to be a positive member of your community, whatever that community may be. And dentistry will afford you the ability to do wonderful things for your community, wonderful things for your family, or however it is that you define happiness. Dentistry is just the means.
Love it. We're getting deep on the Start Your Dental Practice podcast today. So, as far as, the other elements of owning a dental practice, we've talked about leadership. We've talked about, finding your purpose and happiness, which is, like you said, anyone in their 30s or 40s will go through some point in their, I would say in their life, but I would say probably in their day where they think, am I doing this the right way? What is it that I really went out of this big game called life? And some other basic business concepts. As far as, other books other resources that people can have, obviously Dental Economics is a fantastic resource, which you can actually go to dentaleconomics.com right now and read tons of stuff. But what are some other books that you have that are out there that were really interesting to you and helpful to you in your journey?
Yeah, I'll give you some good ones. I've stacked my laptop here on a few of them, so I'll even hold them up. This is a book by Edward Logan, and it's called Dentistry's Business Secrets. So shout out to Dr. Logan. I haven't met the gentleman, but he wrote a nice thick book that just covers a whole heck of a lot of the stuff you wish you had learned in dental school, just basics about deductibles, insurance, and whatever. He's actually given a lot of great advice, and I pulled a lot of dental specific advice from there. I am a book. I'm a bibliophile. I think that's the term I'm looking for. So this is a great question. I have a lot of good books to recommend.
And just for the people listening in, that book was not a fluff book. That was at least a 300 or 400 page book. It was. I didn't think.
Which one was that?
The one that you just showed, the dental business.
Oh yeah, this is not light reading, but it's good stuff. The next one I mentioned this before, is Osterwalder's Business Model Generation. That's the business model canvas. Very visual. That's critical reading as far as I'm concerned. One that I'm particularly interested in, and my laptop is getting lower as I pull these books out from underneath, is if you want to be futurist and you want to think about where the profession's heading in the next few years, that's actually the cover story in October for Dental Economics, is Dentistry's Next 5 Years. We had some people weigh in on this. I am a big fan of The Third Industrial Revolution by Jeremy Rifkin. You can just go on YouTube and put in some, watch him talk about the subject just to get a little heads up on it. I think that we are witnessing, and have been for a few years now, we're in the midst of an incredible technological revolution in terms of communication, energy sources, and transportation. And dentistry, being in the healthcare and service industry, hasn't been radically transformed by that, in the sense that there are industries that are leaving a lot of people now unemployed, being replaced by robots, AI, whatever. Dentistry is not there yet, but certainly we've all seen how technology has improved our businesses. It's transforming in a very positive way. How we can take care of more patients more efficiently, offer them, new diagnostic services. All those things are great. There is a dark side to a revolution, though. Revolutions do leave businesses and jobs in their wake. Dentistry is not there yet, but I think it's good for us to be forward thinking as we are active members of this profession and see where we should be anticipating where our profession's going in the years to
Hopefully, no robots doing dentistry. I don't want. I'm a tech guy. I like tech stuff, but I don't want that. Even I don't
yeah.
want that. That's not efficient in my mind. That's just
I
gonna
think we're
work.
safe on that right now, but a good example of this where that we are seeing a lot of disruption is orthodontics, right? So we, thanks to the do-it-yourself orthodontic practices that are not practices, businesses that are out there, patients who are not actually patients of an orthodontist can take their own impressions or get scanned at centers and remotely then get a series of aligners. And we don't have to get into the whole discussion of good, bad, or what the concerns are. It's certainly controversial, but we can see how not only orthodontists, but even now general dentists are being, and dentists in general are being largely left out of that care, that flow of care. It is so that's a very that's a very present and current example of how technology can theoretically help more people. That's up for discussion. If that is the same level of care as what an orthodontist or dentist could do, but um, it's certainly disruptive, and we should be paying attention to it.
Absolutely. And so, uh, you've given us 3 books, which is great. One only actually I've heard of the last 2. The first one I hadn't heard of, so I may have to pick that one up just because I love reading about as many different business ideas as I can, and having uh, you know talked to so many different people about what the magic bullet to dentistry is. It really excited me when I saw how thick that book was. I'm getting a little giddy about it because I see so many books that come out and they're like 110 pages long, and there's like just like one concept that they talk about for 10 pages, and everything else is
Right.
filler about their qualifications and then things like that. So that did look like a really good book. So I'll probably add that one to my collection. So Dr. Chris, thanks so much for coming on today. Before we sign off, is there any other concepts or things that you'd like to have the community learn about? Any resources where they can read more about either you or some of the ideas that you put out there?
Being in the media business as I am, the dental media business, I will say that there's so many places to get to be part of a community these days. There's so many places to get official continuing education, or at least just opinions and ideas, and that's fantastic. So there's no end to the resources or private Facebook groups or whatever that you can find. I will say that just like you were taught to read a scientific article in a publication with a discerning eye to make sure that the materials and methods were appropriate and that the conclusions are sound, please apply that same scientific academic rigor to what you read on Facebook or in some forum or wherever it might be. There are great ideas, and it's very democratic that everyone now is able to express an opinion, broadcast that, but and that's great. We should be having more conversations as our profession changes. But we should keep in mind that one dude's opinion on Facebook isn't necessarily the be all and end all in how we should lead our lives. Let's keep those kinds of comments in the proper light and take what we can from them.
I like that. That's really good advice. I've had so many late night emails of someone saying somebody said that they could do this on their taxes, and I reply back and I'm saying, well, yes, you can, but that's that person. That's not you. I mean, you understand that person may be having a different situation, and that is such a singular point in time. Anytime someone does a post nowadays, and also nowadays, as everyone probably listening knows, I hope everybody listening knows this. A lot of the times there's ulterior motives for different posts that come out.
Sure.
Won't go too far into that one, but sometimes what you see is not what you get on a lot of those public forums.
Absolutely.
So well, Dr. Chris, thank you so much for taking some time today. We'll have to have you back as another guest at another time to maybe dig some deeper into maybe some more specifics, and then maybe we can go through some exercises of how to really analyze profitability for different dental practices and things like that. So
Sounds good.
I appreciate you. I appreciate Dental Economics for doing what they do. I know it's a labor of love to be able to educate people about the things that you know are important. To be honest, I think now, I would assume now, it's a bit easier to tell people, hey, this is important, and then to listen than it was, like you said, 10 or 15 years ago. Because, I can even see it, just in, we've been in the industry for about 6 years now, and I can see it now. People are really starting to understand, hey, we've got to pay attention to this kind of stuff. And we appreciate you being out there and spreading the good word and keep fighting the good fight. So we appreciate you guys. And next time, guys, if you would, go to Dental Economics, check out Dr. Chris's stuff as a favor to me. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks, Dr. Chris.
Thanks, Jonathan.
So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice.